first special session of Minute 34 de la Legislature en Guahan is called to order. Mr. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the first special session agenda for April 28, 2017.
On the motion to adopt the first special session agenda for April 28, 2017, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we waive session agenda items 2 through 5.
On the motion to waive session agenda items 2 through 5, hearing no objection, so ordered. Clerk, please take the roll.
Senator Atta?
Present.
Senator Uggan? Senator Castro? Speaker Cruz?
Present.
Senator Espaldon? Senator Esteves? Senator Lee? Senator Morrison? Senator Muñoz? Senator Nelson? Senator Rodriguez? Senator San Augustine? Senator San Nicolas? Vice Speaker Terlahi? Senator Torres? Mr. Speaker, there is a quorum.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to waive special session agenda items 7 and 8.
On the motion to waive items 7 and 8 on the special session agenda, hearing no objection, motion carries. You're recognized, Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to advise the members of the message from Imagalahin Guahan specific to the call of a special legislative session, and move that the message be appended to today's special session journal.
On the motion that the message of the Imagalahin Guahan be appended to today's session journal, hearing no objections, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I move to waive session agenda items 10 and 11.
On the motion to waive session agenda item 10 and 11, hearing no objection.
Mr. Speaker, I move that introduce Bill number 1-S, which is an act to add section 1512.4 to Article 5, Chapter 1, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the issuance of general obligation tax and revenue anticipation notes of the Government of Guam, be deemed to have been given its first reading.
On that motion, hearing no objection, so ordered. Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to excuse members not present for today's special session.
On the motion to excuse members not present for today's special session, hearing no objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, we have received a message from Imagalahin Guahan, which seeks the legislature's consideration of Bill number 1-S.
Madam Secretary, you're recognized to read the message transmitted by Imagalahin Guahan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The message was received April 12, 2017, addressed to the Honorable Therese M. Terlahi, Acting Speaker of Imene 34 de la Legislature en Guahan. Dear Madam Speaker, time is of the essence in our effort to avail of a financial solution that will pay all error-free refunds by the end of May, and that will ensure refunds are paid immediately upon processing in the upcoming years. This solution requires the legislature's permission, which I hope to get during the session called by the Speaker to begin April 24th. In good faith and with every intention of following a transparent and open legislative process to include a public hearing, I submitted legislation permitting this financial solution on April 7th, 2017. Unfortunately, a processing error by the Committee on Rules delayed that committee's introduction of my bill until just yesterday, April 11th. Having calculated the number of days required to notice a public hearing and the logistics and time needed for a bill to go through the legislative process, it was critical for this legislation, Bill number 73, to be referred by the Rules Chairman to the appropriate standing committee today. This is not to mention, based on the time needed to take each step toward placement of Bill number 73 on the April 24th session agenda, that the chairperson of such standing committee would have needed to schedule a public hearing for April 20th by today and have published a notice of such hearing no later than tomorrow. That is the last possible day a hearing could be held in order to report my bill out of committee in time for the assumed April 21st meeting of the Rules Committee to adopt the session agenda. I learned that as I drafted this letter that the Rules Committee meeting is scheduled for April 18th, clearly removing any possibility of Bill number 73 reaching the April 24th session floor via the legislative process. In consideration of the need to pass this measure by the end of April, and the now hopeless chance of traversing Bill number 73 through the legislative process, I don't have a choice but to exercise my organic authority, which overcomes the normal process, and present an identical bill, which is attached, for the consideration of senators before a special session of the legislature. This letter serves to notify you that pursuant to the authority vested in me by the Organic Act of Guam, I hereby call a special session of Imina 34 na Legislature in Guahan to commence at 9 a.m. Friday, April 28, 2017, at the Legislative Session Hall. Per 2 GCA subsection 1104, this session shall be designated 34th Guam Legislature First Special Session. I assure you and the senators this was an option of last resort. I sincerely hope the senators and their families are not inconvenienced by this call, and that this advance notice helps to smooth any scheduling conflicts that may arise from this call. I also want you and senators to know that though a governor's authority to place measures before the legislature in special session does not require a public process, my office will hold public hearings prior to the session. We will prepare a report of these proceedings, and I will present this report to senators for their consideration and deliberation on this measure. Sincerely, Eddie Bazacalvo, Imagatlahan, Guahan.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Mr. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill number 1(1)(s) on the second reading file for purposes of discussion and to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
On that motion, thank you very much, Mr. Majority Leader. The Chair recognizes that the body has been called a special session under Section 1423H of the Organic Act of Guam, which states in relevant part, quote, "The governor may call special sessions of the legislature at any time when, in his opinion, the public interest may require it. No legislation may be considered at any special session other than that specified in the call, therefore, or in any special message by the governor to the legislature which is in such session. All sessions of the legislature shall be open to the public." The Chair further recognizes that the preceding section of the Organic Act of Guam, Section 1143B, also states in relevant part, the legislature shall be the judge, quote, "The legislature shall be the judge of the selection and qualification of its own members. It shall choose from its members its own officers, determine its rules and procedures not inconsistent with this chapter, and keep a journal." Recognizing that the rules and procedures of the 34th Guam Legislature emanate from a clear line of authority granted under the Organic Act, Section 6.04D, Part B, Rule 6 of the 34th Guam Legislature Standing Rules state in relevant part, quote, "No bill shall be placed on the session agenda unless accompanied by a committee report conforming to the requirements of these rules or unless the public hearing for the bill has been waived in accordance with Section 2103 of Title II of the Guam Code Annotated." Recognizing further that Section 2103, Chapter 2, Title II of the Guam Code Annotated codifies a law, certain procedures by which the legislature may operate, and state in the relevant part, A, no bill may be passed by the legislature unless it has received a public hearing, except when the presiding officer of the legislatura certifies that an emergency exists involving danger to the public health or safety. The requirement for a public hearing may be waived, and in the event that the bill is identical to a bill introduced earlier, which later bill received a public hearing, then a public hearing for the identical bill may be waived. The chair finds that the Organic Act of Guam states that the legislature shall, quote, determine its rules of procedure under Section 1143B of the Organic Act. The chair finds that the standing rules of this body and Section 2103, Chapter 2, Title II of the Guam Code Annotated requires that no bill shall become law without a public hearing under the laws of Guam. The chair further finds that the body has properly recognized the call of the governor to special session under Section 1423H of the Organic Act, and that no emergency permitting the chair to waive the statutory requirement for a public hearing of Bill 1-1S exists. Having recognized these facts, the chair rules that Bill 1-1S must have a public hearing under the laws of Guam and the rules of this body, and such requirement can be read in harmony with the governor's Organic Act authority. The chair further rules that Bill 1-1S shall be referred to the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication for a public hearing pursuant to the laws of Guam, and that the committee shall hold a hearing on this matter on Friday, May the 5th. It is my intention to hold hearings on that date at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. so that we provide the public with maximum authority to come before the legislature to state their position either for or against this bill.
Could you please repeat that, Mr. Speaker? Was there a referral there? Could you repeat that last couple sentences, please?
The chair refers the bill to the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication public hearing.
I rise to a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I believe it's the body that's, if we're going to refer this bill someplace, that it's the body that should refer the bill. But on a motion,
the chair has ruled. Shall the ruling of the chair be overruled? All those in favor of the chair's ruling?
Mr. Speaker, there's many, many things that you have ruled. Can we please take those as separate pieces? The referral, I would like to be treated separately from the ruling, which I think is in order. If you're going to rule that this is not going to be placed on the agenda because of a lack of a public hearing and a lack of an emergency, but the referral, I think, should be treated separately, Mr. Speaker. It's not a ruling to be made by the presiding officer. It's a motion to be made by the body.
On the objection raised, any other senator wish to be heard? Senator Argan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to you and to our colleagues. Just so that I'm clear, a point of information, I'd like to inquire, just for clarity purposes, based on the chair's ruling, we will rule on the referral, the immediate referral of Bill 1-1S to the Committee on Appropriations, with the understanding that the chair will conduct a public hearing on the proposed measure on Friday, May 5th at 1000 hours, 1400 hours, and 6 p.m., 1800 hours. So that's 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. So
Correct.
that is the ruling of the chair.
Correct.
I just want to make sure that I clarify that. And because you had cited, Mr. Chairman, the need to comply with our standing rules, would it be necessary to amend your statement, notwithstanding the standing rules, on the referral? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, notwithstanding any rule, current rule. I'm assigning it to my committee and having the hearing at those 3 times. There's been an objection raised. Madam Vice Speaker, you still have, your objection is, I'm going to separate it, that was the one.
Yes, I would ask that we treat your ruling as to whether it's appropriate to put this bill on our agenda, whether to, without a public hearing or without a public hearing, I guess, that be treated separately. It'd be bifurcated from what sounds like a motion to refer it to a committee.
So going back to my earlier finding, you want a ruling that it is inappropriate at this point, that you don't support my finding that this bill cannot be heard today without a public hearing?
Well, my point of order is just that your ruling is very broad. It encompasses many things, and so I would ask that you bifurcate your ruling and that you rule on whether it's going to be put on the agenda or not, separately from a referral to a committee. That's all I'm saying right now, Mr. Speaker, so that we can treat those separately.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. If you rule that it cannot be placed on the agenda, how can we make a motion to put it into a committee if it isn't on the agenda? I advise that the motion be a singular, that the ruling be a singular ruling, that due to the fact that it is unable to be placed on the agenda because of the lack of a public hearing, your ruling that it will be that a public hearing shall be held. That's the only way that we can move it directly into a committee for a hearing at this time. If your first ruling is that it shall not be placed on the session agenda, then there is nothing on the agenda for this body to make a motion for.
And that's why I said there was an earlier objection to my final statement. On that objection, will the chair be, should the ruling of the chair be overruled?
Mr. Speaker, the only reason why I'm asking that this be bifurcated is because otherwise, if we are in session on any bill that has had a public hearing and the presiding officer decides to refer it to a committee, that's just not provided for in our rules. It's a motion that needs to be made to refer the bill to a committee, to refer the bill back to the committee, to refer a bill anywhere. And that's all I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is with all due respect, I just don't want that precedent to be set that we, while presiding, can refer bills. I think it's either the Committee on Rules that refers bills or the body that by motion refers bills, and that's all. And I agree, Mr. Speaker, that this should have had a public hearing. We've had this bill since April 7. It hasn't been referred to a committee, and then we received it again on April 12, and we've sat on it without a hearing, and I actually don't have any objection. I understand the law says we can't pass this bill without a public hearing, but we're all here today, and I can't see why we can't go into the committee on the whole and hear at least the executive branch's representatives' presentation of this bill. We're going to have 3 public hearings if it goes to your committee and you set those 3 public hearings. I would like to have that much opportunity for the public to speak. But the more that we hear about this, the more we learn about it as soon as possible, the better for us. We all know this was sent down, and you know, I don't know about whether we're going to support this bill or not, but all I know is that if it's sent down and it's said it's very time sensitive, that we act like that and we consider at least whether it is or it's not. And so I'm just suggesting that, that's why I want it to be bifurcated, Mr. Speaker, is if we are going to talk about it being on the agenda or not, or being able to pass that today, that's one issue, but whether it's going to be referred to committee, I just suggest the rules say that's done by the body or by the Committee on Rules. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I'm confused. I thought I was following the argument, but then now... So I'm going to ask for, if possible, to have a 1-minute recess or have a short recess, Mr. Speaker, just so that we can iron out what the rules really say and really what are the proper procedural motions, because I don't have the rules in front of me right now, and I would like to be able to examine myself.
Okay. There being requests for recess, we're in recess.
Thank you.
This special session is back in session. Madam Majority Leader, do I understand you had the floor and we broke?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was asking if you could, with all due respect, rephrase your ruling and that it be limited to whether the bill was, had a public hearing and was eligible to be placed on our second reading or not.
All right, so we'll go back to Mr. Majority Leader. Your motion was to place the bill in second reading.
That's correct, Mr. Speaker.
It is the ruling of the chair that not having had a public hearing, the bill cannot be placed on the second reading file. It is on the agenda, having had its first reading. I'm ruling that it can't go to second because it hasn't had a public hearing.
In that case, Mr. Speaker, I would move that Bill 1-S be referred to the Committee on Appropriations for the purpose of conducting the necessary hearing at the appropriate time.
Senator,
I would like to amend that motion, Mr. Speaker, to insert the exact times and dates that you had mentioned earlier. I don't remember them, but if the clerk could read those back to us, that's how I would amend that motion, Mr. Speaker.
all right, so the motion shall read that the Bill 11S be referred to the Committee on Appropriation for public hearing on the 5th of May at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. For the purpose of hearing input from the public.
That's correct.
All those in favor? Thank you. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The second motion is that at this point, having nothing on second reading, it would be appropriate to recess until, I know I had spoken of the possibility of having a hearing, recessing till the 8th, unless members wanted to meet on Saturday after the hearings, or even the night of the hearing. But I'd like to have the hearings first and see what the public, and then get a feeling from the members on whether or not they want to meet on Saturday or on Monday. But I'm sensitive to the fact that it's time sensitive, and I'm moving it as quickly as possible. The notices for the public hearing are going out as soon as we figure. I can't do 10 o'clock now because it's 11. Well, no, still can do 10 for next Friday, and then say that there's going to be further hearings at 2 and 6. So there's no question that I'm trying to reach out to as large a group of people as possible. And then as my assurance to some of you that at the earliest possible, whether it's on Saturday or on Monday, we will reconvene in session, in special session, to consider the bill. It will be determined on how quickly we can put the committee report together, or if everybody attends all the hearings, then I may not need to have a committee report, because then everybody will have heard it. Well, but I'm hoping, we'll see. But let's have the hearings so that I know that many of us are still suffering from 3 years ago. Let's not repeat that. So is there any objection to recessing till after May the 5th at the earliest date, after May the 5th? Do you want a date certain, Senator Espadon?
Not necessarily that I want a date certain, Mr. Speaker, but depending on what happens at the public hearing on Friday, May 5th, if after the 6 o'clock public hearing, there is still time, there may be the potential also to perhaps go into session right afterwards if we're all in attendance. And I mentioned that just so that it's not discounted, because the only thing that you mentioned is the possibility of Saturday, the following Saturday or the Monday. But I just wanted to include that there may be also the possibility that even that evening after the public hearing, depending on the amount of testimony that's going to be given, right, whether that might also be an available date as well.
So then it'll be a recess at the call of the speaker. Is that satisfactory?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Any objection to recess at the call of the speaker? Mr. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think to clear this slate, I'm going to withdraw whatever amendments I've made. So the new motion I made. So the motion that I'm making now is that Bill 1-S be referred to the Committee on Appropriations for the purpose of conducting a public hearing on May 5th, and that the legislature will reconvene subject to the call of the Speaker, but no later than May 8th.
Does everybody understand that motion? Any objection to the motion? We're in recess until the call of the Speaker, no later than the 8th, but after the hearings on the 5th. Thank you.